Social Factor.
What is up, guys?
Hello, everyone.
Listening to the Social Factor.
Yep.
It is Easter Sunday.
Happy Easter Sunday.
And anyway, today we are doing part 2 of mental disorders
And illnesses.
and illnesses and whatnot. Last week we left it off with dissociative disorders. Before we actually begin talking about that again, let me just plug a few things. So first, if you don't like us on Facebook, definitely go do that. You'll be kept up to date with things that are going on, episode schedules. You'll see stuff that we've talked about, stuff like that. Just a lot of stuff, Go like us on Facebook, facebook.com/The Social Factor Podcast. And don't forget to give it a like. We will have our website being released very soon. We have been working on it. And
let's be fair, he's been working on it. I'm just sitting around watching him.
Well, you do a lot of the research, and I do a lot of the tech stuff.
True
That's kind of how stuff works.
Yay.
I do a little bit of research, but you do a lot more, and because I focus a lot on the tech stuff.
Correct.
The tech part of
without the tech part, I wouldn't be able to do what I do.
Without the tech part, we wouldn't even be able to do a show.
Exactly. Amen.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why, and that's a lot why David mostly talks during the shows too. A lot,
Because I'm your mouthpiece.
Because he's the one that does a lot of the research. So the website's coming very soon, and so without further ado, let's just get into part 2 of mental disorders. Part 2 and the final episode of mental disorders.
And what a unique subject to talk about, but one that's very common. I don't think there's anyone out there, especially once you're an adult, who hasn't met someone with a mental disorder or illness. Especially in the larger cities, you have more concentration of individuals versus a rural area. You're gonna see this on the streets often. Individuals who are homeless, who, the majority of homeless people do suffer from one form or another mental disorder. Not saying every person on the street is, but there are quite a few people out there who have the various different type of diagnoses that we are now talking about. Last week we left off with dissociative disorders, and I want to again touch on that real quick. This particular diagnosis or disorder.
Diagnoses?
Yeah, diagnoses.
Oh.
Pronouncing the niece.
Niece. Diagnoses.
Are people who are suffering or have severe disturbances or changes in memory, consciousness, identity, and general awareness of themselves and their surroundings. These disorders usually are associated with overwhelming stress, which may be the results of traumatic events, accidents, or disasters that may be experienced or witnessed by the individual. Dissociative identity disorder, formerly called multiple personality disorder, also known as split personality, and depersonality disorders are examples of dissociative disorders. Now, they made movies about this. I've only met one person. This is actually one of the more rare disorders out there, but I've met one person with it, and when they go through those episodes, it's actually kind of frightening. They change personalities. It's crazy. And they disassociate with their actual reality. So, so it's a rough one to have, quite honestly.
Kind of like the movie Split.
Which, yeah, how many personalities did he have?
23, and I believe that there was a 24th one that called The Beast that came out at the end of the movie.
In the end of the movie, yeah. And the thing is, this was actually based on evidence. The movie was actually based on an actual case. So, imagine that, huh? The next subject is called the Factitious Disorder. Now, when someone thinks of factitious, what do you think if you hear that?
Someone who's fake?
Fictitious, right?
Oh, fictitious.
But you're right, it's fake.
Because, yeah, fictitious, you think of fiction.
Correct. Well, let's talk about this, because this is a unique disorder, but everyone, well, not everyone, but I've actually seen it, people that are like hypochondriac would be like that. But this is actually worse than a hypochondriac. And the definition is factitious disorders are conditions in which a person knowingly and intentionally creates or complains of physical and or mental or emotional symptoms in order to place the individual in the role of a patient or a person in need of help. So when I think of this, these are individuals who, in most cases, were probably neglected as a child or a young, a teen, a person that needs attention. Okay, and this is a way for them to crave it, but it's to a level where it's become chronic.
Right.
You know what I mean? So in a way, I mean, you kind of feel bad for these people.
Yeah.
The next one, and this one I want to elaborate on a little more. Sexual and gender disorders. Now, in current America and also in Europe, from what I understand,
I know first of all, I know that where this is going. Please, no offense to anybody who actually considers themselves this or is this. This literally is just research we've done.
Correct.
Where we found that there's actually a disorder. We were surprised too that there's actually a disorder.
But there's going to be a twist at the end, because
Okay.
I've recently done some additional research. Now, this is all based on the DSM-5, which is used by it's a standard by which all doctors and physicians go by currently. Now they're looking at going up to DSM-6, which has all the renewals and the revisions of current diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or no-cs. All right.
The diagnoses.
Yeah. Now let me first explain the definition according to the DSM-5. Okay. Sexual and gender disorders, followed up by, these include disorders that affect sexual desire, performance, and behavior, sexual dysfunction, gender identity disorder, and the paraphilia, which are examples of sexual and gender disorders. Now, one of those stood out to me as I was doing it, and I was actually shocked. Now, in the media today, in the modern communications and TV shows and people you meet today, transgender has become a big topic in the last 10 years, okay, last decade. And you see a lot of media they're showing people who are transgender that are making it in the business industry, and they also you saw it in the military at one point. Now, according to the DSM-5, gender identity disorder falls to the transgender movement. But here's the twist. Under the World Health Organization, also known as the WHO, which they have called the CID, okay, which is like a Center Identification Disease. I forget the exact acronym. They're up to like CID 11, so they're a few books ahead of us, and they're actually taking that particular identity disorder, gender identity disorder, out. They're revising it, saying this may not be a disorder at all, because homosexuality is not considered a disorder. It used to be considered a disorder, but it's not anymore. So the question lies, is this more of a social influence versus a medical influence? Or is it really medicine has gotten new discoveries stating that, okay, this particular disorder, gender identity disorder, needs to get off the shelf because these individuals have other reasons for being the way they are versus the disorder, the mental disorder. Mm-hmm. So leaving it said like that, that would all fall under the DSM-5 sexual and gender disorders, okay? If you have any more questions or you have opinions or statements that you'd like to make, come to our website regarding that particular situation or that particular topic.
You can make comments right on our Facebook page, and there's also a comment section under every episode located on the actual site Spreaker of which allows us to do this show.
Correct.
So you can comment under there, or you can just comment on Facebook.
And again, this is not a biased topic for us. We honestly, I have friends that are transgender. I love them to death. They're good people. But when I saw this, it actually stood out to me, and then I cross-referenced it with what's currently going on in the World Health Organization.
Yeah, because I never knew that transgender was considered a mental disorder.
Neither did I.
Look that up.
Yeah. And in there, as you read, like in DSM-4, which goes back to I think the 1970s or 60s, homosexuality was considered a disorder.
Well, if transgender is considered a disorder under DSM-5, then I'm not really surprised that would be considered a disorder back then.
Oh yeah, and you got to remember the era. I mean, in the 70s and even earlier than that. I mean,
this was back when we still had mental health institutions that
asylums,
asylums that did shock therapy, thinking, "Hey, this will cure them."
Oh yeah, and the funny thing is about that is that whole concept came from the United States, but went to Germany during World War II, and then came back to the U.S. You know what I mean? It's like a full circle.
Right.
All right, let's move on. You have the next disorder is called Somatic Symptom Disorder, and the definition for it is a person with a somatic symptom disorder, formerly known as a psychosomatic disorder or somatoform disorder. So somatoform disorder experience physical symptoms of an illness or pain with an excessive and disproportionate level of distress, regardless of whether or not a doctor can find a medical cause for the symptoms. Hypochondriac. Okay, this is, in a sense, this is a hypochondriac syndrome. Okay, we're getting pretty close to the end here, people, but.
That he doesn't mean the end of the episode.
Not the end of the episode, but the end of the list that I have currently.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing, because quite honestly, when I looked at another original website that had every disorder possible known to the DSM-5. There were over 420 different disorders currently in the list for the DSM-5.
Which is incredible, because I bet you that maybe that I was about to say that list is probably going to increase, but maybe it'll decrease, being that right now they're working on getting rid of like I said, you said that homosexuality and homosexuality used to be considered a mental disorder.
Correct.
And transgenderness is still on there, but they're looking to upgrade it and get rid of that as a disorder.
And the pressures actually come from the World Health Organization, which governs pretty much all the other nations.
So that's why I'm saying that possibly this list may get smaller, but then again they may also add new stuff that hasn't been out yet. It's a puzzle.
The medical field is an industry, okay? It's a money-making industry between the equipment that's used, between the medicines that's created, between the education that people have to go through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So don't expect things to lessen.
Back then when hospital, obviously people still, it was still expensive to people, relatively, kind of. But back then, there wasn't necessarily insurance and stuff. I'm talking Little House on the Prairie times and stuff like that.
Well, back then you had a doctor that was in the village.
Yeah, exactly. And
one doctor.
Back then, it wasn't all about making money. It was basically just to, cover my expenses for actually having to do this, and then just give me a little bit extra as a profit.
Or bartering was another way of doing it. Yeah.
And nowadays, hey, this only cost us $2. But we're going to charge $100 for it.
Well, that's no different from the military or the government itself. However, if you look at the ratio of mortality rates from back then, as you were describing,
exactly,
to today, you can't compare it. People are living longer today.
People are living, because back then, back then, when they were still using pirate ships and that back in Pocahontas's era. And we'll talk about that at a later time.
Yeah, so we're talking about the I think that was in the 1400s, right?
roughly, probably.
Well, actually, no.
Indian
like
Pilgrim era, somewhere around there.
Yeah, we're not talking Columbus. We're talking years after that. So like the 15th, 16th century.
Back then, the average life expectancy was only like 21 years.
30, I would say.
What? Yeah.
30.
30-ish years. Yeah. And now it's all the way up to like people live to their like. Well, these days people are. I mean, yeah, it's rare, but some people do live past 100. It's incredibly rare. But most people live to somewhere around like their 80s-ish.
Average, yeah. I mean, the standard for United States citizens is for men is 73.
Yeah.
For women, it's 78. Okay, or 75 to 78. But and a lot of that has to do.
And there's a reason for that. No, this is just an opinion. This is not a fact. There's a reason for that. Is because men do a lot more stupid crap than women.
Well, true, but it's also the genetic makeup. Women are, let's be honest, women are the stronger gender.
See that? Have you ever seen that meme on Facebook where the guy is painting the wall at the stairs and he has one side of the ladder on one side of the stairs, the other side against the wall? There's a little caption that says, "This is why women live longer."
Yeah, that's right. And why women hope to live longer. All right, sorry, we got away from the actual thing.
Hey, it was funny.
It was very funny, and I wish humor would be more apparent. Like that. Let's go to the. I think it's the last one here. Yeah. Okay. So the last one that I see on here, it's called the Tic Disorder. TIC. Okay.
Tourette's.
It's one of them. Yep. People with tic disorders make sounds or display non-purposeful body movements that are repeated, quick, sudden, and or uncontrollable, like you're doing right now. Sounds that are made involuntary are called vocal tics. Tourette syndrome is an example of a tic disorder. Other diseases or conditions, including various sleep-related problems and many forms of dementia, including Alzheimer's disease, are sometimes classified as mental illness because they involve the brain. So it's a cognitive disorder right there.
By the way, I don't have Tourette's. That was just...
I'm sorry. He was doing something with a zipper, and I'm like, that's a tic disorder.
I wasn't doing something with my zipper. I was going. Okay, as you were saying that, I was going like this, something like this, and then you're like
you're nervous twitch,
like you're doing right now, and I'm like, I do this all the time. That's nothing to do with Tourette's.
Out of the corner of my eye, it looked like you were zipping up and down.
I don't have a zipper. Well, I do have a zipper right here, but it's not like I was going like.
Okay. All right, you're funny as heck. All right. So this is a tic disorder, which I believe my friend has, but I'm kidding. He doesn't. He hasn't. He's got an anxiety disorder that makes him look like he's ticking. Okay, this isn't a show where we're supposed to laugh.
We can.
Okay. We can laugh the entire show.
Where we tell the facts.
Okay.
And, like, we tell the facts. We don't take sides. We have our own opinionated sides, but that doesn't get in the way of telling about the facts, no matter if we agree with it or not. It's
only the facts, ma'am.
Only the facts. And our opinions, or sometimes, like, we can create laughter out of stuff. There's no problem with that. What's wrong with a little humor?
Humor is a good thing for the soul. Carol's like, aren't you live?
No. Nope. It's pre-recorded.
Yeah, she didn't know that. She thought it was a live show.
Yeah.
All right. So we've covered pretty much the most basic WebMD version of mental disorders. I know there's many more. Trust me, I know. Yeah. 420 additional disorders.
I just want to quickly say, when I said it's pre-recorded, usually we do today, we mentioned that it said, it's Easter Sunday at the beginning of this episode. We're actually recording this on the Saturday before, so if you're listening, on the Saturday before this, because it's Easter, when this is supposed to go, when this is actually supposed to be done. But because it's Easter, we cannot do the show because we'll be with our families and whatnot. So we are pre-recording the show right now, and we are going to push it live tomorrow. We're going to basically do a pre-recorded live show tomorrow. So yes, this is being broadcasted live. However, the recording is not live. This has already been recorded. So
Correct.
Now I got that out of the way. What were you gonna say?
Well, it is a show, so I have to talk. No. I remember reading some things about the PTSD, and it had a pretty generic explanation about it. Mm-hmm. And as I was reading, like 4 different disorders had the same type of pattern. Mm-hmm. And it was so generic that I felt, and I was thinking about the last show, and I'm like, I gotta say something about this because there's more to it.
Yeah.
You know, trauma is usually the most common.
Do you want me to tell her that I'll explain it to her while I'm talking?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Trauma is usually the most common reason why people have it. And let's be honest, PTSD can come in many, many different forms. Anything from a traumatic accident or incident to actually witnessing, not actually being the person that's injured or involved, but a spectator. A person that's seen someone pass away, or a person that's seen a nasty accident, or has witnessed in wartime some atrocities, can be as affected as an individual that actually went through it. And so that's definitely a venue that's not explained. Okay. Another thing is a lot of times our traumas sometimes are before we were even conscious of who we are. In my case, I almost passed away in a fire when I was an infant. And I spent several months in the hospital because of it. Now, I didn't hear about it until I was about 8 years old, but your brain is a recording machine. Subconsciously, you have all that information there from the day you're born, even before you're born. And an incident where, it's a near-death situation, you're in a coma for how long, all that's recorded in your brain, and it can add to future events or events that took place after that. Often childhood trauma stays with a person until the day they die. All right, and if it was a trauma that was impressionable enough on the individual, it lingers throughout adulthood.
Yeah.
And often these individuals, most people that I've met and myself, they display anger issues. Substance abuse is another one. Road rage.
I got that.
Road rage is...
but I believe that road rage is also a factor of anxiety, because when you're on the road and with anxiety, it's just basically like you want to get to your destination ASAP, or if you're let's say you're in like a 55 and someone's going like 50, and then you're just like,
you're insulted.
Yeah, you're like, come on, people. I have road rage a lot.
Yeah, but I don't think you have the road rage that I'm talking about.
Probably not.
The kind that confronts people.
No.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm not, or the kind that like when you roll down your window and you wave your arm like, hurry up, like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't have that. I just mumble to myself in the car.
That's not road rage. That's just being pissed off.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Road rage is when you're literally using your vehicle, or you're so upset that you're not rational anymore.
Or that you become psychotic and just try to run them off the road.
That's a psychosis right there. Potentially a psychosis. I've had it a few times. When I felt threatened, especially if I had my kids in the car, and someone was not a good driver and they were putting me at risk, I get pissed. And one time, and I was told about this by my therapist.
I was told about this by my therapist.
One time I followed an individual home.
Yeah.
But he put me in danger at the time, and I was so pissed I followed him home. And I confronted this guy. And now, it was a complete stranger. I didn't know if he had a weapon or not. But at that moment, I didn't care. And I scared the piss out of him.
Okay. It's just like, holy crap, he's following me home.
Oh, he's freaking. He's like, what the hell? And turns out it was a 19-year-old. And he was sick as hell. And he got frustrated with me because he thought I wasn't driving fast enough. So he illegally passed me. And that was enough to trigger me. And I followed him home. And when I realized that he was a young man and he was actually sick to his stomach, I mean, I called him all kinds of names, right? Mm-hmm. He could have called the cops on me, and he didn't, thank God. Otherwise, I've never been in trouble with the law in my life, considering what I have. but at that moment I wasn't very rational either, you know. And that's definitely a sign of PTSD. It doesn't mean that every person with a road rage has it. They might just have simple anger issue for whatever reason. But often you find people with PTSD in moments where they are triggered have a tendency of overreacting or going to a very irrational state. Another thing is if you think about something obsessively, something that happened to you, or you just can't get this feeling out of your head because it bothered you that much because it was part of the trauma or something you experienced that was almost like outside of your body type thing. That's often like nightmares, for instance, having what's it called? Nightmares where you physically act out. Like one time, my poor wife, I'm very blessed with my wife. She has put up with a lot of BS with me. And one night I had a horrible dream and I actually attacked my wife. The only thing I can say is I turned around, grabbed her face, and when I touched her, I woke up. And I felt so bad for my wife. I was ready to sleep in a different room for good. And, she's pretty brave because she said, no, you're my husband. You need to lay next to me.
That's what happens when you have PTSD.
Yep.
You ever seen Iron Man 3?
No, I haven't.
You never seen Iron Man 3? Okay, because in it, Robert Downey Jr. or Tony Stark is laying in bed with Pepper Potts or Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yummy.
And they show they're both sleeping, and then they show Tony Stark having flashbacks of from the first Avengers movie with how he had all of that stuff where he had to go up and then into space and then fall back down.
Yeah.
That gave him PTSD and anxiety. So all of a sudden he's tossing and turning, and then she wakes up and sees that he's struggling. So she touches him and says, tries to calm him, but then they have Iron Man bodyguards on the side of their bed, and anyway, the bodyguard grabs Pepper, and then all of a sudden she starts freaking out, and then Tony wakes up, jumps up, and then basically deactivates the Iron Man.
Okay. So you're describing where he had a nightmare.
Yeah.
And it was distressing to him to a point where she noticed the distress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that. For a good 15 to 20 years, you couldn't... And I wasn't even in combat. I was in the Marine Corps, but I wasn't in combat. The fall that I had, about the fall, certainly did a number on me, but also what happened afterwards made it even worse. But if you approached me while I was asleep, that was not a good thing. You'd have to gently, don't suddenly wake me up because I come out, I'm glued.
Just how you don't scare the crap out of you, and also how you don't sit there and just continuously press the doorbell.
Yeah, that's funny.
I used to do that to David, and he'd always just yell at me.
Yep.
As I would just go up to his door and I just repeatedly press the doorbell until he answered. And then he's like, "Dude, you only need to do it once, please."
Yeah,
I heard it.
It's something like the noise of doorbells. It's like scratching on a blackboard.
Oh!
Okay, that's what it is to me.
That shiz is intense.
You know it. And I'm hypersensitive to noise anyway.
Yeah.
So and that might be from my PTSD, it might just be from who I am. But yeah, I will take offense to someone that does it more than once. Because it's like, are you kidding me? And if it's an aggressive one where it's like ding, 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 versus ding, ding.
Be like Shelton.
Yeah.
David. Ding.
Oh,
David.
I'd beat
ding,
Shelton
David.
up. I would beat him up in a heartbeat.
You know that because that's literally he goes like
That's,
petty.
Yep.
Petty.
But it's
petty.
cute because it's Shelton.
Yeah.
But it's
not Shelton, it's Sheldon.
Bite me. But yeah, so we're veering off from that. I guess ultimately PTSD exhibits itself in sometimes antisocial behavior, because and people avoid often, and that's something I learned was the VA. They become avoidant of everyone around them, including their own family at times. So if these are things I'm telling the audience and my buddy over here, because those are telltale signs that a person is not where they're supposed to be, especially with PTSD. Here's the thing: it wasn't until I was properly diagnosed that some of those symptoms went away. Okay, and it was recently that I'm not having those nightmares like I used to. I've broken my toe, I've broken my hand through rages and nightmares, and put a lot of holes in the walls. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny because my mom and I talked about this in the past. My grandfather did the same thing. Now, he went through hell and back in the Holocaust.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't go through the same stuff.
You got to be dealing with major PTSD if you actually went through being a prisoner in the Holocaust.
Yeah, yeah. And the thing, here, at least prisoners have rights.
Really?
Yeah. In the Holocaust, they weren't prisoners. They were there to be executed. They were there to be slaves, first of all, or they were just bodies that were ready to go into the chambers and stuff. So it was even worse in a sense. A prisoner, like a POW during wartime, has rights. Germans were horrible, and Japanese were as bad in offering rights to their prisoners. But according to the Geneva Convention, they're supposed to. Okay.
Okay.
And that's why Germany and Japan were punished as severely as they were, the individuals that were in charge, because they violated human rights. Okay. But the Germans were not actually held accountable for the Holocaust. During the Nuremberg trials, we're getting off subject, but I want to do a correction here. During the Nuremberg trials, which happened in 1945 and 46, the only reason that the Nazis were convicted and hung, some of them, was because they killed 88 Americans.
Right.
Had nothing to do with what they did in the Holocaust.
Right.
They were, I mean, it was included, but it wasn't the direct reason why they were executed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So going back, PTSD, as I said, can be very, very versatile. It can be very difficult to diagnose. And often, even doctors have a hard time to diagnose it properly. Often people with PTSD are giving antidepressants, okay? Because depression does accompany PTSD, okay? And that's the way it is. I mean, it took 23 years for me to be properly diagnosed to where I could actually get help. And I was in the system, not only the VA, but also the civilian world, civilian doctors. One doctor out of all of them properly diagnosed me, and I thought he was a kook. I thought he was crazy for that diagnosis.
Yeah.
And it turned out that's exactly what I am.
You're a kook.
No, I'm not a kook.
Oh, I thought that's what you were saying.
It's my bipolar.
Right, right.
But I
you
thought
talk about how you were improperly diagnosed for how long, and then they finally said, wait a second, I think you have bipolar.
Well, this particular person diagnosed me in 2005. And it was the first time I went to him. And one thing the part of the reason I thought he was a kook is he supposedly had bipolar and his hand was shaking like this. And I'm like, okay. So I took this thing called Seroquel, okay, which is a medicine for bipolar. And a month or so later, all of a sudden I'm sitting at home and something weird happened to me. I know now what it was, but at the time I thought it was the medicine. So I went cold turkey on Seroquel, and you're not supposed to do that. And I ended up developing all these other problems from it. I ended up having to be hospitalized for 4 days in 2005 because I went way off the deep end. You know what I mean? And the doctor at the hospital diagnosed me with just depression. I went back to the original diagnosis, but turns out this guy right here, the one I called the kook, was actually the most direct and closest to what I had. Okay. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
My life would have been easier had I just
known that in the first place, but
had I recognized it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's another thing. Doctors are human beings, and often the AMA, which is the American Medical Association, dictates how and what they can do. Okay? So, especially in the mental health field, mental health is actually an institution that's underfunded. Okay? No matter where you go, even the VA, it's still a section of the VA that's like the smaller one, because it doesn't quite have the same funds. And researchers, they're more worried about the physical aspect. Okay, how to cure disease that is physical. There's a lot more funding in that direction versus the mental. And you figured the mental part, without the mental, there's no physical.
Right.
Okay? And if there is a impairment or something that is causing disharmony to the individual, often it's mentally, it's not physical. And most of our issues start mentally. Okay? So I think we got it backwards. But the doctors, for them to stay doctors, they have to follow the regulation that is set for them.
Exactly.
So often the patient is the one that suffers because of it.
Because there is such possibility and such thing as losing your license to practice medicine.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be honest. In the medical field, especially family doctors and stuff, annually, on average, over 40,000 patients actually die.
Yeah,
from misdiagnosis.
That's why doctors are always like very careful about prescribing medications too, and they will never prescribe you something unless they're absolutely 100% sure that it's what you need.
Correct.
Because if they prescribe you something, and then you start taking that, and then you start having complications from that medicine, or that medicine kills you or something, that doctor can not only lose his license, but basically...
He's under investigation.
Yeah, he's basically under investigation at that point. Exactly.
Yeah, his career could be right down the tube.
Exactly.
But, having said that, all doctors have insurance.
Yep.
They can't practice without the insurance.
Is it the doctor themselves that has the insurance and that pays for it, or is it just the hospital that has the insurance that covers all the doctors?
The doctor covers himself. And, it's funny, my mom, her husband was given the wrong medication and had ended up with, what's that called? Oh my God, I just had it. Oh, I forget the name now. That upsets me so badly.
And I've been on 2 different medications now for anxiety. The reason why I'm on a second one now is because my body learned to become immune to the first one. So, and because of the first one also, it basically just stopped working the way it was supposed to. So now I'm on a different one.
Well, if it was only 2, I'd be happy. I'm on all kinds of meds.
Yeah, and you are.
Yeah. And the thing about that is sometimes you end up with all these different medicines, and I got to be honest, my life hasn't been improved because of it. But the end result, long-term usage of these medicines actually cause all kinds of problems, between kidney problems, liver problems, thyroid problems, you name it.
Especially with pain, painkillers. Painkillers, the biggest enemy with your painkillers is your liver, because that's literally the biggest thing that painkillers affects is your liver, and that's why it says, hey, do not take more than prescribed, because like with ibuprofen, let me backtrack. With your liver, basically filters out, the how do I say it?
The waste.
The waste out of
chemicals.
You. Yeah, that's why people who drink a lot are basically killing their liver, because
long term, yeah.
Yeah, and anyway, so yeah, but like ibuprofen.
Toxins is the word we're looking for.
Toxins, yes. Yeah, your liver cleans out toxins from the body, but you got to remember that there's only so much that your liver can handle. And if your liver is basically overwhelmed, then it will literally start to shut down because it can't handle that much.
Yep.
And that's why there's a warning on acetaminophen bottles that says, hey, do not take more than the directions say. With ibuprofen, obviously your liver still filters it, but the thing that's the real painkiller in there is the NSAID. And basically NSAID is not agreeable with your stomach. It's
so we're talking potential ulcers.
It's a chemical that basically hurts your stomach, that can tear away the lining of your stomach.
Yeah, which turns into an ulcer.
Exactly. And I mean, I was relatively close to ulcers in 2012. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I used to drink a lot of soda, and in 2012, I went every single day with having a stomach ache, and it seemed like when I ate, it felt a little better, and then it went back to whatever, and then you scanned my stomach, and you said, "Wow, dude, you're close to ulcers," because you said that my stomach was bleeding, and so you
had bloody stool, didn't you?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Let's not talk about that on the radio.
Well, it's a question.
No, I don't think I did.
Okay.
But anyway, so I stopped drinking soda. I don't drink soda anymore at all. And David also gave me some apple cider vinegar pills, and he said, "Here, take one of these every day, and this will basically balance the acid in your stomach. It'll neutralize it, and your stomach will be able to heal and repair itself." And I did that. My stomach is healed. It's all good now.
Man, I'm good.
Yeah, I haven't had any issues with my stomach since 2012.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, drinking a lot of soda not only can that mess with your stomach, but that can mess with your emotions too. I mean, I felt ever since I gave up soda in my diet, I had started feeling a lot more physically and emotionally better.
Well, most likely it's not so much the chemicals as it is the sugar.
Exactly, yeah.
Because that additional glucose or the sugar...
high fructose corn syrup.
Yep. They've said that it causes those particular problems between weight gain, emotionalism, sluggishness. Yeah. Now, I love sodas. It's one of my addictions since I was a child.
I only drink juice, milk, and water. And occasionally I like once a month or two, I sit down with Stephanie and have some wine.
Oh, I love wine.
But we don't drink beer or anything like that. To Stephanie and I, beer tastes like water that somebody took a piss in. And plus, beer gives Stephanie a stomachache because beer is made with wheat, and that has gluten.
Wheat and yeast, Well, that's right. She's gluten intolerant.
Yep.
Well, we're running pretty close to the end of our show. I know it wasn't like we usually do, but most definitely, if you ever come across a person with mental illness of any kind or mental disorders, have some empathy with them because they're in a world of hurt.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily their fault. No. I mean, they would give up the disorder in a heartbeat. They would choose to live a normal life in a heartbeat. It's
most mental disorders, it's nobody's fault. It's maybe their environment or
it's just the fact that
genetics.
It's in their brain and there's nothing they can do about it.
Correct.
That's just how it is.
Yep.
But anyway, we'll be back next week with the live show, and we will announce the topic at a later time, and we, like I said, we have topics that are lined up even into next season already.
Yeah, good.
Which is nice. But anyway, again, just a few plugs. Facebook, you can check out our Facebook, keep up to date with things, learn more stuff about the research that we do. The topics that we do on every show, facebook.com/The Social Factor Podcast. And then we also have our website coming out very soon, probably within the next few days. And on there, you can listen to the live show, see all of our past episodes, and you can also, we'll have polls on there for, research for all of our different shows and stuff like that. So that'll be coming soon. That will be it for this show. So
you guys have yourself a wonderful Easter.
Yep. Have a wonderful Easter and a fantastic night. And we'll be back next week with an all-new live show.
God bless.
See you later.